Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me. Today is exciting because I am kicking off a new series, and this series is Failure Flashback. That was sort of supposed to be like a time machine sound effect. So the concept here is failure flashback. Okay, what are we talking about in this series? Well, one of the things that we're doing is being explicit, and we're looking at failure. Because so many other programs that we do will be sort of general in nature, right? Like how do you handle anger instead of being specific? How do you handle anger at being fired by an incompetent boss? That's more specific. One of the things in terms of it being more explicit and specific is I also am going to focus on the failure part. So much of the entire foundation of all the programs I do is all about, solutions. It's the name of the show, solutions. It's always about asking how can I surpass my goals. So we focus so much on sort of these positive outcomes, which obviously makes sense, right? Um, but one of the things that has been helpful to me, I was watching uh, sort of a documentary, and it was about structural failures. So structural failures, like engineering issues, bridges failed, the buildings failed. A plane wasn't designed correctly in some way, and it failed, and there were, serious negative consequences. People died when the bridge fell, or they died when the building or the walkway in the building failed, or they died when the plane didn't function like it was supposed to. So there's this incredible process where failure in these instances is examined, studied, taught, to try to obviously prevent it from happening again. Right? That seems really um, evident. But the thing that's so important, I think, and that I took away as part of creating the series is so much of what I do in in teaching and educating um, is all about, we're trying to reach this sort of better outcome, right? I want to surpass that goal. I want to, quote, succeed or accomplish this thing. And we don't spend a lot of time in these programs talking about failure, failed. And so I think that there's sort of a need for balance. And one of the things that I hesitated a bit with this series is that I think there's a lot of um, failure awareness, shall we say, in society at large, and it's all over the world. So it's pretty consistent around the world that you'll turn into media and you'll see powerful or well-known people in that part of the world, or sometimes worldwide, and they'll have sort of this confessional about some horrible bad thing that happened, and then sort of their journey through this valley of pain and heartbreak, and then how they've ended up on the other side of it now, and look at them, they're a famous athlete, or they're an award-winning entertainer or politician or whatever. And sometimes I think that can be incredibly helpful. I mentioned in the show notes that I know myself. I've maybe I've been dealing with something specific in my life, and I've read something about how somebody else dealt with it who just happens, to be public, which is why I read about it, right? Because you don't read about sort of what your neighbor did, and it's helped me at times, right? So it can help you feel less alone, and it can help me get motivated on my own path. But I do think it's important to remember that no one else has, quote, the answer, unquote. Meaning, I do experience this myself. Certainly in groups and one-on-one, where I do, coaching and mentoring and all of this, where, I'm here, trying to come up with solutions. That's my job, right? Is to try to fix things and make it better. But I think sometimes people don't maintain awareness, situational awareness, that they're the ones that are in charge. They're the expert on their lives. I can give you tools and techniques. I can tell you how to use it. I can show you what the best, process would be to deploy it. I can do a lot, but I can't get inside another person and live their life. I have the answer for my life at times. At times, I don't have the answer at all, which is part of what we're going to talk about in this series. But I think it's important to not look to other people when you need to understand that the final resource, the final judge, and the final decision maker, it's you. You are living your unique life. And so I do think we can take in information from lots of different resources. I do think there's a lot of sort of the public confessional, mostly I'm sure motivated by, altruistic and good desires to try to bring attention to an issue. Someone who, will share that they face a certain medical condition and share that. And I can certainly see how in doing that, then other people that might have that same or similar medical condition or know someone suffering it could feel like, oh, A, we're not alone. Look at this person. They dealt with it. And now, this is how they dealt with it successfully. And look at them, in the media, they look great. And I know that, this will turn out well for me or my loved one. So that can be helpful. On the other hand, we also have to remember anytime we see somebody, that's prominent, and in a public forum, it's often, set up for them to look their best. So, they have the best makeup and the best clothing and styling and lighting and editing. And so the version you see of other people isn't reflective of the totality of who they are. That's a snapshot of who they are at that moment under very flattering circumstances. So I think what tends to happen is people will, look and see and hear and read somebody else tell the story about how they overcame something or, lived through something or survived something, horrible. And then somebody sitting at home will think, well, wow, look how great they look. And I look horrible, and they look so together, and I look like I'm falling apart, and then they'll become very judgmental and negative in regards to themselves, and that's just unhealthy. It's also unrealistic. Again, if it was you, if somebody came to wherever you are right now, and I've had the privilege over the years of doing a lot of live television, and especially when you go to the studios of these networks. New York is where I've worked, but certainly in Los Angeles or anywhere else where there's an incredibly talented staff of literally like some of the best makeup artists that you'll ever encounter, and lighting specialists, and yeah, you look fantastic. But that's what they do. They spend millions of dollars to create these, the sets and the lighting and the makeup and all of this so that you look great. That's not necessarily reflective. I wouldn't want to watch someone who had suffered from some, disease and say, wow, look how great they look, and look at me, I'm a mess. Well, that's them under those circumstances. You'd look really different under those circumstances too. And I don't want sort of somebody else's journey or story or expression of how they've persevered to be turned inwardly in a negative way to members of the public, and that happens, and that's one of the reasons why I thought long and hard about this series. I also think it's really important to understand that nobody else has all the answers for themselves. So again, we're all works in progress. So what that means is somebody may have some public confessional about how they overcame, a childhood illness, and the fact that they're, an adult and no longer a child and they don't have the illness. That's great, right? They may have come up with some great tools, techniques, and solutions that's not an issue in their life any longer. But that doesn't mean that they don't have any other challenges. It doesn't mean that their whole life is some sort of perfect fantasy. To the best of my knowledge, I've never met anyone whose life is some sort of total perfect fantasy. I've met people who different parts of their lives go pretty well. I've met people who overall are pretty content, but I've never met anybody who's just problem free, challenge free, everything all day, all the time is just, delirious laughter of no stress and happiness. I've never seen it, because just because somebody has a great job doesn't mean necessarily that that they have low stress. Just because somebody has financial resources doesn't mean that they don't have other, challenges in their lives, with health or loved ones or family or anything. Pain is distributed amongst us. Now, some of us have a lot more of it that we just sort of ended up with than other people, and that is accurate. But I really want to again underscore that the purpose of the series is specifically it's going to be a failure analysis based on my anecdotal experiences, and it's a flashback. So I'm going to talk about things that I experienced and that I think I've come up with some ideas that might be solutions. but it's by no means A, that I have the answer for anyone else for their lives, and B, it also means that I don't have the answer in my own life for everything. I'm a work in progress, and I do shows constantly about things I'm trying to figure out or working through, or new problems. Right? Every time you look back at a failure flashback, and you might think, "Oh, I feel so good about that. I've conquered that. Yeah, great. What about this new thing? That happens tomorrow that I never even had thought about. That's life." So I'm doing a lot to try to put it in context, I think, and also try to justify it, because I witness a reasonable amount of all this sort of dialogue of, the story of, the story arc of, redemption that people put out there. And again, I do believe most of it is for the right reason, publicize it, an illness, a condition, an overlooked population, or people that may have a struggle. I do think some of it is presented and emphasized in ways because people are selling something. That's why they're on TV or in the media or on the internet, right? If they're an athlete, they'd ideally like you to come buy a ticket and see them and be a fan, or buy a jersey or whatever to support them. They're often selling a book or a movie or some specific product at that time. If they're an entertainer, maybe they like you to come see them in concert. If they are an expert, maybe they want you to buy their book. If they're a politician, they want your vote. So, and nothing's wrong with that. And again, like, if they didn't have that platform, then nobody would have them on that media outlet to begin with. They wouldn't be in the magazine. They wouldn't be in the show. So I'm not chastising them. I'm just saying, as we're critical thinkers, we do whole series here on myth warriors. We do a whole thing uh, on trying to think about, is this something that I should believe? Is it credible? We use our critical thinking constantly. I mean, that's one of the foundations of all of our programs. Use the critical thinking with this, and I'm trying to explain and walk through in this premiere show of this new series a lot of the thought process that went into what it is, what the purpose is, what the intended hope is. So the intended outcome would be, obviously, beyond just sort of me explicitly having to try to go back in my deteriorating memory and remember and share failing, uh, is to hopefully share how it happened, how I responded, solutions I employed and deployed, and how have I remained vigilant today? Because very few things in life you can just sort of put in a drawer and say, I'm done, it'll never happen again. It's not exactly. I mean, usually we have to remain vigilant to make sure, if we see warning signs, that we're prepared. So this is an interesting series, and again, I am hopeful, as always, and have the best intentions that there will be something of service in this series and in this episode for everybody who partakes. So, what's the specific focus of our failure flashback today? It is I am broke. Our failure flashback, specific, explicit failure that we're going to be analyzing, discussing, and sharing, is about me in my life ending up in a situation where I am broke. That's it. So let's dig in. What do I mean by I am broke? Well, that's interesting too, because there are people have different definitions of this. I've actually had lots of conversations with people in my life who have financial support. So maybe they have a family or a friend, spouse, a trust fund or something where there is money and it's sitting somewhere, and maybe they have like a monthly budget that they have exceeded, or that they're close to exceeding, and they'll say things, sort of, they'll just toss it out there like, I'm broke, I'm so broke, and they mean within their own context that they're broke. Like, if they have to spend their budget, they may have to go into some other bank account, or ask for somebody else to give them extra money. Okay, that's a version of broke. What am I saying in my failure flashback? I'm talking about, and I hate doing this because none of us like to spend time thinking about the worst times, but hopefully, again, it'll be helpful. All right, so I'm thinking, and honestly, I couldn't even tell you like what specific date, but I know the time range in my life, and I'm sitting somewhere, and when I say I am broke, I mean I'm broke. I mean, I don't have any more money. I don't have anybody to ask for any money. I'm going to also add as a caveat, I've done shows on this. We do, of course, financial fierceness, where we're always, forward looking and less. We're not just talking about, you know, my individual experiences. We're talking about sort of larger financial issues, where I have advocated for and continue to be an advocate that you need to be able to support yourself financially for numerous reasons. But I'm looking back in time, and I'm looking at I'm in my failure flashback right now, and I'm sitting in my apartment, and I am broke. I have no money. I have, again, no one that I can ask. And what I mean by that is, I've never been married. I'm still not married. So I don't have a spouse. I never have had one that I can go and say, okay, I need financial help. Um, and I'm not someone that has inherited money or had some sort of trust or something. Um, Pretty much, uh, when after I finished high school, and I went and I started college, and I have supported myself since that time. So I was, I guess, 17 when I started college, and started working a lot. And I've shared in other programs, in many other programs, examples from when I worked in, fast food, and I worked at the mall in a retail environment. I worked as a telemarketer selling credit cards. I worked as an admin assistant at a government agency. I worked as a as a phone psychic, which, people always laugh. I think it's funny. It really wasn't funny, because actually that was one of the better paying jobs I had at the time when I worked as a phone psychic. So what was I doing? Was I just going around collecting experiences so later I could do shows? No. Or write, programs and books about this? No. I was trying to get money to eat. So when I talk about the failure flashback, I mean sitting in a place, in an apartment, and I don't have any money. So like this is before the internet and internet banking. So I go look at my, what's the balance in my account. Now this is before the internet banking. So back then, if I wanted to know exactly how much money I had, you could call on the phone and like enter all the digits on your account and stuff, and the little phone voice would tell you how much money you had in there. And if you had less than a certain amount of money, there's no way to pull it out unless you want to go to a cashier inside a bank. So they have the automatic teller, right? The ATM. So I remember, if I had less than like $10, let's say I had $3, then I can't get that money out at an ATM, because ATMs don't give you single dollars. Usually, in fact, this was how, how do I recognize I'm broke, right? So before we do the analysis of, how did it happen? How did I respond? Let's see. How did I know I was broke? Well, I don't have any money. Meaning, I don't have any money in my purse or in my wallet or in my jeans. I don't have any extra change on the floor underneath my, you know, couch. There's just no money anywhere, because I've already looked everywhere and found all that money. When I call the bank, I have less than $10, and at this point, this has been going on, right? So I had actually learned what bank teller machines would give you less than $20, because most bank teller machines, even now, don't want to give you less than, $20, because they just, that somebody has to go physically, manually put all those little 20s in there and stuff. Okay, so I knew I can't go to a bank that only gives me, $20, because I only have, let's say I have $12. So I need to know where the ATM is. I can go pull out the $10, and that'll leave me like the $2, in the bank. Why am I talking about ATM? Because one of the things that was powerful for me about being broke is the shame. I was ashamed that I was broke. I was embarrassed. And so I don't want to have to like go inside a bank and fill out like a form and wait in line for like 20 minutes or longer to go to talk to somebody that's a bank teller to do a withdrawal for like $2. It's embarrassing, and I'm ashamed, and I don't want to do it. And so I won't. So that's why I started to learn, okay, I need to find where the ATM machines are that'll give you $10. So that way when I got down to like, $12 again, I could go pull my $10 out without having to see somebody in a bank and wait, in line and fill out a form for $2. Plus, I was trying to, okay, so I'm trying to figure out, am I broke? I don't have any money. And because I don't have any money, everything in my life forecloses. So I don't have any money. I can't like get in my car and spend gas money to drive really far to find the bank. Like I need an ATM machine, ideally that's close enough to where I'm living. I can walk to it because I don't have the money to put gas in my car. Some other instances are I don't have any money. I've noticed that there's no money in the bank, or there's not enough money that I can pull out, or there's maybe like $2 or $3 left, right? So I've already pulled out the $10 earlier. Now there's like $2, $3 in the account, and I don't want to go in there and be embarrassed to ask for that. So I just don't have any money. I don't have the money to put more gas in my car, so I'm very limited to where I can go and drive. And at the time, I lived in a city that didn't have any real mass transit at all. None. I'm not exaggerating. This is, of course, in the U.S. and the States where, it's a car culture. So I'm stressed about that. Speaking of the car, it was, a car making payments on. And it doesn't even matter if the payment was, the payment could have been $10. That's the thing about money. If you don't have it, it doesn't matter if it's $10 or $10 million. It's the same hurdle. You don't have it. So I was a car, and I had a car payment that was very low. Like now I look back and think, wow, that was a really cheap car payment. But again, it doesn't matter because I don't have any money. And when I didn't have the money to pay my car payment, then I was worried because I'm trying to hide the car because the people who I owe the money to are going to come pick the car up. Meaning this, I borrowed money from a bank to get the car, right? I can't pay my payment. They're going to give me some time. You can be late on a payment. And I've done a lot of programs about your credit score and all this kind of stuff now explaining all of this. At some point, though, if you just don't pay your bill, something like a vehicle, usually the entity that you owe the money to, they will just come literally take the property back. It's called a repossession. And so I'm stressed out about being broke, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want them to repossess the car because even though there's only a little bit of gas in there, there's enough gas to get me to my job, and I need to get to my job to be able to potentially get more money. So I called a friend and I said, hey, can I switch cars with you? Can you drive my car for a little bit? And the reason I did that is because she had a garage at her apartment complex, and I knew that if the people came to my house that I owed money for the car, they wouldn't find it because I would have her car. Is this dishonest? To a certain degree, yes. And what I was trying to do is wait, right? Like this is when I was working jobs often that I had tips. So I'm working as a bar back, which is like not, it's like the assistant to a bartender because I wasn't quite good enough to be the full bartender. And I could get tips when I could just get to work. So I'm like trying to get to like the next, busy shift, right? Maybe it's Thursday and I'm trying to get to Saturday because I know when I get to work, which I only have enough gas to get there, then I'll go inside, I'll work, and I'll get tips. I'll get cash money while I'm there. And even if I got like $40, that would be way more than enough to get me through. Because $40 is way more than enough to when I'm broke, right? I don't have any cash or whatever. I always would plan ahead for food because you have to have something to eat. And I fortunately can make it on very little food. So, there's always the stereotype of the college student who eats, ramen noodles every day, which are very cheap in the States. They're literally pennies for a package. I ate a lot of that. And just whatever I could do to sort of extend things. It was so bad at some points I didn't have money for like more toilet paper. So I'd go to like a store, and go to the restroom in that store where they'd have rolls of toilet paper, and I would just sort of take an extra roll of toilet paper home with me because I needed it. And I also had been in situations where I was at a store trying to buy food or something, and I only had a certain amount of money, like $4, but yet what I'd put on the counter to buy, it was like a little over. And that's again the shame. It's embarrassing when you go to buy something and then the people turn to you and say, okay, that'll be $4.25. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, I only have like $3.82. So you have to start putting things back because you can't afford all the things. And it's embarrassing and shameful. Even today, I have to just add whenever I am at a store and I see that happen to somebody, I always sort of very quietly just reach out and put money down to just cover it because it's so embarrassing. And I've been there, and nobody wants to be in that position. So there's all this shame that comes with it. So how do I know I'm broke? Because at this moment, I have no money, and I don't have any way to get any. And I'm constantly in fear of bills. And I just want to mention at this point that this is a two-part premiere episode because I'm going to be sharing some more tips and tools, and I want to make sure that I don't skimp on any of the content. So here I am, failure flashback. I'm in a position where I have no money. I've exhausted my ability to go to my bank and get any money. I'm too ashamed to go wait in line for 30 minutes to try to get $2 out of a bank. If the $2 are there, sometimes I've already spent everything. I'm down to zero. I don't have the ability to get any more money for gas. I've just enough in the car to get to my next work shift, and I have set up work so that I can get cash tips at some of my jobs so that I can get money immediately. I can't wait for a paycheck because it's too far away. I pre-plan to have something to eat, even if it's just something that's, like a 50-cent soup or 50-cent noodles or something, that I can just boil some water and eat that. Great, it's something. And I'm worried at this point because I know I'm broke because I can't pay anything. I don't have the money to pay my utilities, my, gas or electric. I don't have, at my broke flashpoint, then a flashback that I'm thinking of, I'd already gotten rid of everything. I didn't have a phone. This is before they have cell phones and all this kind of stuff they have now. But I had landline, but I couldn't afford that. Even I'd gone to I'd gone to everybody, all my bills, and tried to get the bill as low as I could. So, I'd gone to the phone company and, said, hey, look, I'm I don't make any money. I make whatever minimum wage, and is there a cheap plan I can get on? And I had gotten on some kind of plan that was like $10 a month, but it was really restrictive. So you can't make long distance calls at this time. That was a big deal. You can only make local calls. I think I could only make like a certain number of outgoing local calls, and then I could receive incoming calls. But I'd already been unable to pay that, so they actually turned that off. So I don't even have a phone. And of course, this is again for internet. So there is no internet, there's no texting, there's no cell phone, there's none of that stuff anyway. So I have no phone, but I'm keeping the utilities like electric, gas on because I need to be able to have hot water and to heat up stuff to eat, and to bathe and go to the toilet. I am hiding my car from the people that I owe the car note to, the lender, because I don't have the money to make the payment right now, and I'm trying to get to work over the next couple of days so that I can get the money and then run over and give a money order or cash to the car lender, and I'm trying to do that before they come and send out an issue to repossess or take back the car. Um, and mostly what I feel in my flashback time is just shame. It's two things. It's fear because I'm constantly frightened. Because here's the thing, because I don't have any options. So if I have just enough gas in the car, which is actually my friend's car because she's got, my car because I don't have any, I'm scared that they'll try to put a order out to repossess my car. Um, there's just enough gas in there to get just to work where I need to go, tomorrow or the day after to get my shift so I can get some tips. I don't have any other money. So there is no other gas. I can't get anywhere. And again, I'm not in a place where there's public transport and there's not much, around me that I can get to. I'm scared because if something happens and I run out of gas trying to get to work to do the shift to get the tip money, I don't really have a plan. And I don't even have anybody to call, like, to come get me, I guess. I guess I could call that one friend who I traded cars with to come get me, I guess, if her car broke down. But how am I going to call her? It's before cell phones. I'm just going to stand on the road, I guess, and cry. It's just a fear, and it's just like a feeling, at least in my experience at that time, where I felt like I could never catch my breath. So of course I don't have television at this point. Right, so I have no phone because I was on the $9 or $10 plan somewhere around there, and then I couldn't pay that, and then so they turned the phone off. I don't have TV to watch because I certainly can't pay for TV, cable TV or anything. And it's before the internet, so you're not gonna be able to go like get quote online. But I'll tell you the truth, even if the internet had existed, how am I gonna pay an internet fee? Internet fees are not cheap. So I'm broke, and I'm sitting in a place where I'm trying not to use much, the utility, because every day I keep thinking I can't. I'm already behind on bills, so it's like I don't want to run up more bills higher. Like I don't want to use the lights at all. So let me just sit here in the dark with no phone, and I certainly have no television, and I'm just going to sit here and wait and try to hold on so I can get to my next work shift, so I can hope that the fumes, meaning the little tiny amount of gasoline in the car, will get me to my work plan, and then I can be at work and then get tips, and then I'll have cash, and then as I leave work, I'll have to try to figure out how will I put more gas in the vehicle. And I will say, at one of these jobs I had, it was sort of an entertainment area, so I knew I'd be going to this, bar restaurant, and I'd be getting tips, and I knew that there was a place I could literally, if I had to, like walk to and like get like one of those containers you put gas in and fill that up and then take it back to the car and then fill it up, because I wasn't sure the car would have enough gas to get from the work location to like the gas station without running out. And this brings us to the end of part 1 of our 2-part episode, I Am Broke, which is part of our premiere of our Failure Flashback series. Again, I'm Courtney Anderson, and I encourage you to come, as always, to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information. Thank you so much.